Namaste, everyone. I'm going to give you a meditation for soul retrieval. What is soul retrieval? Basically, soul retrieval is the integration of the soul in the body. A part of the soul's journey completion is getting the soul in the body, right? You would think being a human being in this physical realm, that should be easy, right? That should be natural, right? But in this third dimensional matrix system, it isn't designed, right? This matrix third dimensional realm, it wasn't designed for the human being to embody the soul, right? In this particular matrix third dimensional realm was designed with an agenda, right? And there's many agendas attached to it. And a part of the agenda did not so much involve humans functioning from a more liberated existence, right? We know this is part of the human condition, right? And a part of this human condition when it comes to the spiritual practice, right, is about building up the personal power, right? Either that's through mantra recitation, right? Either that's through yoga, either that's through meditation, building up the personal power, right? Having the knowledge, having the prosperity, right? To break through this matrix third dimensional realm. Again, it wasn't designed for humans to be functioning from a more liberated existence, right? So in this third dimensional reality, in order to really get the soul in the body, we have to have some sort of tool, right? Because when we're a child, right, from 5 to 9 is what I see is when we are most in the soul in the body, right? From ages 5 to 9, basically, that's when our self-esteem is high. That's when we're fearless. That's when we're very courageous, just naturally, because we're serving our infinity when, ages 5 to 9. But then what happens is the human condition, right? Shame, judgment, emotion, feelings not being good enough really kick in. And then what happens is we start to feel less and less in contact with our soul. We feel less and less infinite, and we feel less and less energetic. And then over time, we function more mechanical than actual functioning from our liberated existence, right? That we function more from that when we're ages 5 to 9, right? So this matrix third dimensional realm actually was designed for humans to function more from a mechanical existence than an actual liberated existence, right? And this goes all the way back to the Anunnaki times, right, with their agenda, right? And there's many agendas since then in the promoting of these particular agendas. But as we know in the Akashic record of our sort of human history, right, this human DNA was very much constructed to, in ways, be more mechanical and less liberated, right? So when we talk about the soul's journey completion, that's about not only becoming a firm, virtuous, as well as noble human being, but it's also about having the creative fulfillment, right? Which is the recognition of your infinity, right? Which again, that's what we meditate, mantra recitation, but it's also the recognition of God within you, right? And that's about this, what we call consciousness, higher intelligence, higher creativity, right? Where you start to really develop your psychic gifts as a human being. And that comes naturally when you start to function more from the perspective of the 5 to 9 year old inner child, right? And that is a more liberated existence and liberated functionality than what we have as adults, right? With a lot of us, the soul gets out of the body, right? When we start to, this human condition, we start to have this low self-worth, this low self-esteem, we start to function from that. We get in this karma play with the karmas and the cause and effect, and then have to do that boomerang thing back and forth, right? Until we get enough personal power to end this cycle, right? We call the never-ending cycle of this back and forth karma play, right? And it's almost like, you do this to me, I do this to you, then this happens, and then that happens, and then that kind of karma play, right? It takes a personal power, or the discipline, or you could say the resilience to to get the body and the soul right, so you can function more from the dharmic perspective, which again is a point of high self-esteem, high self-worth, right? And again, when you're 5 to 9, that's the creative mind. I'm not sure if there's research with the brain scans of these young children, right? But the creative mind and the emotional capacity is very refined at that particular age. It's almost, I see it very similar to the emotional and sort of creative mind of like orcas, right? Orcas are very good problem solvers, right? They have a very refined creative mind and an emotional capacity that is very very cared for, right? It's very nurtured, this part of themselves, right? Emotional, which has to do with compassion and forgiveness and connection and nature and wonder and high imagination, these type of things. And as a child from 5 to 9, we have that it's pretty lucrative. It's pretty well-rounded. But then, the human condition comes in, and we start to function more mechanical, which is, the shame. I shouldn't express myself. I should, oppressive behavior, these bad habits, these sort of sabotage, and that kind of, that functionality is very, it doesn't serve your infinity. It just keeps you in this karma play, right? Where it's just this back and forth type of loop or purgatory that a lot of people find themselves in, right? So soul retrieval is kind of like a rehabilitation, rehabilitation that you're doing to yourself, right? You're sort of retrieving this. When I see you retrieving the soul, you're also connecting with past lives, right? You're connecting with your inner child. I mean, you're connecting and balancing out the 10 bodies. You're connecting with the Akashic record to download some, talents, gifts, right? Because it's natural. Human being in the natural rhythm. Again, we're in a matrix, sort of third dimensional realm that has an agenda. It was designed for us to be more mechanical. That's kind of the Anunnaki type of agenda in this patriarchal dark age, right? So the only way and people have found ways in this sort of matrix, third dimensional sort of realm, have found ways to get the soul in the body, right? Now, if we're like on a fifth dimensional talk of reality, right, that it's a lot easier to maintain the soul in the body, right? Because you don't have as much as these sort of human conditions that kind of disconnect, almost like you're plugged in, and the human condition kind of plugs you out, kind of rips the cord out of you, right? And a lot of us feel like that. A lot of us feel really plugged in, and then someone comes, and it's like the human condition just rips it out of the wall, and then all of a sudden we start to lose the flow between the heart and the mind. That becomes sort of miscircuited, right? The body and the mind miscircuited, right? When it comes to sexuality, there's a miscircuit, right? And then misunderstandings, appropriations, and then having to kind of, untangle these sort of miscircuits, right? With the head and the mind, the heart and the head, right? So a part of the soul retrieval, it is about, for me, I see it as mantra recitation, We can have yoga, many forms of yoga that kind of burns off the layers that we sort of accumulate, these mechanical layers called facades, masks, personas, that are based off of this human condition, which is shame, right? You got to cover up yourself, right, with a thick layer of some sort of, mis-circuited ego, right, or persona or mask, and then the layers get so thick, and then you get all kinds of mis-circuited, and the flow, the channel, you get personality disorders, and then that you feel quite disjointed and fragmented, right? So really, the mantra recitation, which we will do, I see it as just playing it throughout the night on low, or just throughout the day. What it does is it circuits you correctly, right? We're not meant to be mis-circuited, right? In the way, this human condition, we're disconnected from our infinity. We feel separate from God. God is this, thing over there. I have to, like, the connect, I can't even get there, right? I'm not there, right? It's somewhere over there, but I won't be there until I die, type of thing, right? And then this low self-esteem, which is this aggressive competitive nature we have with each other, right? That's based off of a lower chakra imbalance with, greed and, selfishness, and, this sort of insecurities in sex, money, food, water, right? Due to this, this matrix, third dimension, there is a sort of, not enough, right? That's kind of not enough, right? That's a common sort of condition, is dealing with that subconscious, very ancient pattern of it's not enough, so I gotta, like, take it all, and I gotta, like, hoard it all, and I gotta steal it all, and I gotta do these deceptive things and desperate things to get things, right? And that, again, is goes all the way back to the Anunnaki times, when they sort of created this third dimensional reality and took us out of this more fifth dimensional realm, right, where we were more, liberated, right, emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually, right? We didn't have all these thick layers to us that, present all kinds of inner, outer obstacles that we have to maneuver out of the system before we can actually start to really, energetically vibrate the cosmos, right? So with the vibrating of the cosmos, the mantra it's very old. It's a tool that is used before the patriarchal dark age. It was used before what we call the Anunnaki times. It actually comes from off planet, before Mars, when we were there on Mars for a couple, for a time. This is millions of years in our history, right? And it comes from a different star system, right? And these mantras come from a particular star system that actually is very liberated, meaning very ancient star system, much older than our own, and is very liberated, right? So these beings, humans, would channel these mantras, right? They were seen as gods, or, star beings, to these ancient people who would channel these mantras, right? They would channel Sanskrit, right? And from these gods, or these, they would receive it from the gods, right, or the star beings, or they would have these kind of relationships with these high priestesses that are sort of depicted as not even being human, right? They would be some blue being type being look like, or they just didn't have the human, right? They just didn't have that sort of human, right? There were some sort of different, right? Very different, very high, from a higher, more liberated plane. And they would come to give these mantras, give these kriyas, to basically help human beings eventually, over time, within the lineage, to vibrate the cosmos, so much so where they can completely completely uplift the matrix, the third dimension, and begin to sort of jump into this time space continuum that is there, that is a sort of a land of prosperity, or realm of prosperity, right? And again, when you do that soul retrieval, it is like you are entering into a more elevated plane of existence, right? A more liberated plane of existence. So really, how we, in many ways, how we kind of separate ourselves from our soul and become very flesh, very, false, very fake, very superficial, with this egomania, this karma play, where we're very weak, meaning we don't have much virtue, or we don't have much personal power or self-control or discipline, these kinds of things, right? Or much creativity, right? Is when we start to really plug in to the human condition, which we do. Is children from 5 to 9, we're really plugged into our soul directly. But then what happens in the childhood, we unplug ourselves, and then we begin to plug ourselves into the matrix show, into the the third dimensional type of design. And then we plug ourselves in, and we begin to plug ourselves into low self-worth, low self-esteem, and then we get mis-circuited by all of that, right? We feel great misunderstanding, we feel great misappropriation, we start to lose our energy, right? And as young people, we start to lose our energy, right? Because a part of this third dimension, in many ways, the design of it, even in the patriarchal dark age, it was kind of it was kind of there to mis-circuit you, right? I mean, as weird as that sounds, in many ways, as long as you are not plugged in to the correct source of energy, you're just going to be confused and in this misunderstanding, and just, you're not going to really have your personal power to actually have a sort of impact, right? And that was the kind of the game that we were playing in the patriarchal dark age, is competition, right? So in order to beat your competition, make them stupid, meaning put them, sort of plug them in and mis-circuit them, so that they have no personal power, they have low self-worth, they have low self-esteem, so that they're confused, right? So that they really don't know how to vibrate the cosmos and receive their prosperity, which is a competitive edge, right? If you know how to vibrate the cosmos and receive prosperity in the eyes of the whoever agenda that is wanting to play its cards, right? You have no competitive edge, right? You have no competitive edge, right? As long as you're mis-circuited, and as long as you're in this karma play with yourself and these people, and you're basically have all these kind of knots, right? And that kind of thing, right? So a part of the 5 to 9 and the soul retrieval, we even do this mantra to connect with the inner child, right? 5 to 9 is a part, that creative mind is probably the most, we could say the most advanced of the chronology, is that 5 to 9, right? And if we could begin to develop ourselves from that perspective, rather than the perspective of whatever sort of low self-worth or low self-esteem, if we could develop ourselves from the perspective of 5 to 9, and you see these kids, if you work with them, you see them, they're in a perspective that's very different from their parents, their teachers, society. It's like they're vibrating in a totally different dimensional frequency, right? So if we were to kind of sort of build ourselves up from the perspective of that 5 to 9-year-old self, we would begin to be building ourselves up in a more towards a more liberated plane of existence, right? Which is about character development. It's about the virtues of courage and knowledge and resilience and tolerance and self-respect and integrity and personal power, these type of virtues that these mantras have embedded in them, the virtues of the human excellence. So the soul retrieval, we begin to have that, we want that, or we have that, is so that we can have that human excellence, so we can vibrate the cosmos again, right? So that we can, I like to say poopy pants, right? Poopy pants, right? Because it's almost like you can't run, you can't really walk when your pants are to your knees, right? The pulling of the pants, as I see it as, it's almost like, put on your stride, get your stature, get your posture, right? When your pants are to your knees, you're not walking correctly, right? So there's a sense of, when you are connected to your soul, there's a sense of corrective action that we don't really have when we're not connected to our soul. When we're not connected to our soul, corrective action seems kind of, it seems very kind of undervalued, right? Because that corrective action becomes undervalued, and what becomes more sort of valued is the inability, whatever that may be, the disability, the inability, the disability, the incapability. That becomes, the undervalue of being connected to your soul. And then, sort of the upper value of inability, incapability, inconsistency, that kind of thing, right? So we're going to do a basic sort of soul retrieval meditation, right? That is going to help you vibrate the cosmos. Again, if you're drawn to this video, it's most likely because you do want to have that soul retrieval. Because again, I'm telling you, this Matrix show from the Anunnaki times, it was this third dimensional patriarchal dark age that we've been in for, 5,500 years or so, going all the way back to the pharaohs, when the pharaohs started to basically promote this bigger agenda, and this bigger sort of promoting this this design, right? Promoting it, promoting this design of what we're gonna, as human beings, gonna experience for the next couple thousands of years. A part of the soul retrieval has been an ancient sort of shamanistic sort of practice, we could say, a very tribal practice of basically vibrating the cosmos and breaking through the chains, you call it the chains, the restraints that keep you bound to these, we can call it ancestral trauma, generational curses. It keeps you bound to these type of obstacles, right, that really create a sort of disability, inability, incapability in really having that creative fulfillment, right? And some people, they get so into that mechanical whatever life experience, and they spend lifetimes in that, not realizing the soul of, that perspective from 5 to 9 is actually going to give you that soul's journey completion, right? Where, again, I call a soul's journey completion where you begin to call ascend, right? Where you begin to really come into the fullness of you, right? Your spiritual you, right? The soul you. And that is really when you start to, master this, all these dimensions, these frequencies on earth. And that's when you start to really come into the sort of prosperity of you, right? And prosperity is not just wealth, it's also knowledge, it's also lineage, it's also healing, good health, good nature, virtue, living a virtuous life, right? A firm sort of sort of clean and the sort of clear channel with the divine, right? And that's what we talk about, having the sort of ecstatic experience of having this major connectivity with, the cosmos, with the earth, and feeling like a great channel, feeling like a great, you could say beacon, or just a great sort of vessel of really advanced psychic abilities that really come when you start to have the soulfulness, right? The talents, the gifts, the craftsmanship, the psychic abilities. They really start to come in through the soul retrieval, through getting the soul in the body, and then forgiveness, compassion, these type of philosophies become primary nature. They don't become secondary, and low self-worth, low self-esteem becomes primary. It becomes primary for you to actually function from your soul star, right? When you die and you return to your oversoul, your sattvic record, the higher, more liberated plane, you're not ascending and like, huh? Like you're waking up from a dream and you had no idea what you were doing in this time. Like you just like, I don't know what the hell I was doing. I was just doing whatever for whatever. Like it's not that whatever you call the higher self, the oversoul, the sattvic record of you, what you came here to do, right? That actually gets you excel and you sort of achieve that, right, through getting the soul in the body, getting the virtues of the soul, getting the philosophy, getting the spirituality, getting the sort of high energy of that. Because the one thing about this, Wizard of Oz sort of magic show, matrix show, whatever this third dimension, sort of agenda that had in the patriarchal dark age, is the low energy, right? The low energy creates low intelligence, and that creates a karmic sort of binding and knots and miscircuited sort of impulsiveness, recklessness, carelessness. And then when you have low energy, you have low potency, you have low personal power, low dedication, low determination, low discipline, and that creates a mechanical human, right? When you have low energy, that creates a mechanical human where you're just on autopilot, or you're just numb, or you're just detached from the earth and the generating force of life, right? The earth, and you start to walk around kind of stupefied, like, I did that, and that caused that, and the reaping of that, like that kind of thing, and you don't take accountability or responsibility for it, which is a part of the design, right? A part of what we human beings collectively have chose to participate in. And those who are quote unquote breaking the curses or breaking, the ending the trauma wheel, are usually those who are vibrating the cosmos and having this immense sort of immense immersion with their soul and with their sattvic record and with lifetimes that we have, not just on earth but in higher vibrations of earth, like fifth dimension, other planets as well. And you begin to download, you begin to integrate, you begin to sort of bring into this physical body functionalities that are not even from this earth, right? From other planets, from other dimensions, right? To actually override the functionality that in many ways is considered low. As Yogi Bhajan has said, he calls this not even a half-star motel, right? We'll say a half-star, half-star hotel, right? Meaning, the functionality of us, what we're pumping out into the earth and what we're pumping into our bodies in the bigger picture of other planetary systems who could be much older, could also be young, we don't know. In comparison, we as human beings, the functionality of the patriarchal dark age is not well standard, right? It's not considered well, right? There's well, there's good, there's best type of thing, right? And we're kind of in the well, right? And a lot of it has, we look a lot of times to the elite, right? But then the other population, the mass population, is not even at that functionality, right? And even going back to Anunnaki times, ancient Egyptian times, we think of Mesopotamia, and even going further back, we think of these elite groups that are associated with like the Anunnaki or the Syrian sort of system, or these other systems, as getting the privilege to vibrate the cosmos. And then we think of like these other people that they have no sort of sort of functionality to be able to actually have that kind of existence within themselves. And that's where we talk about, these many revolts and these many, revolutions, where we talk about, human beings wanting to raise their vibration and wanting to compete with these elite groups, right? Tired of being mechanical, right? Tired of having low energy, right? And revolting against the gods, or who the star beings, or whoever it seems these elite sort of having all of the knowledge type of stuff, right? The powers that were type of thing, right? And throughout time, you've seen major groups of many leagues of human beings. We talk about the Moses and Jesus that actually were able to vibrate the cosmos so much so where they actually were able to sort of change the functionality of themselves, right? From like a low functionality, more mechanical, into a higher functionality that is more spiritually sublime and more creatively fulfilled, right? So they could have that soul's journey completion. They could have that creative fulfillment, right? So that they could have the virtues that they need in order to truly, you could say, ascend and have the self-mastery. And the virtues, again, when you have that sort of virtues, in many ways that's in our history, in this patriarchal dark age, it felt like these virtues, you could only obtain them if you were a part of an elite group or secret society or something like that. That was, for the privileged elite. But in many ways, these mantra recitation and these, was something as a way for people, groups of people who could earn it, who had the personal power, or just who had the heart, who had the sort of the heart of it, that big heart, that big drive, would have would receive the soul retrieval, and would start to vibrate the cosmos, and would start to really on behalf of probably their whole lineage, would have these creative fulfillment, or they have the vibration of you could say the union or the communion with God, right? And that would give them the virtues of the universe, the virtues of their true identity as a human being, which is not low human being, low self-worth, low self-esteem, right? It would be of a human being who has the virtues of, you say, grace, or personal power, dignity, self-respect, to be able to take accountability for their manifestations, and then begin to manifest directly in the channel, in the psychic development of their soul and their consciousness in the physical body, to manifest in this physical body, in this third dimensional patriarchal dark age, right? And that's when you really start to, we link up through the mantras to this fifth dimension, so we can start to channel some real energy, not these facades, fake stuff, superficiality, these false whatever, these almost like these tricks, this deception and whatever, this desperation stuff. We're linking up to something that's a little more wiser than that, right? So that we can really have a manifestation impact that actually has some grit. It actually has some sort of standing ground, right? It actually has some real you can say spiritual power to it, rather than a lot of people just selling it to get it cheap or whatever. It's almost like thinking the lottery ticket or something like that, and realizing like that's just a lie, right? Or something like that, right? It's just a trick, right? There's many of these little shit tricks and magic show type of the presentations, right? They thinking it's the Wizard of Oz is the great the great leader, but it ends up being a charlatan. So that's why we link up. That's why you have that soul retrieval, so you're not fooled, so you're not so foolish, and so you have a strong discernment, right? So that your psychic development can actually happen, right? Human and mechanical function is not psychic. Human that is not, it's not psychic in many ways, can be very stupid. Very, very stupid. Very impulsive, very like wrong place, wrong time, and just playing that for the life, right? Psychic development is how human, in this patriarchal dark age, was able to gain a level of sovereignty amongst the agendas, you could say, that didn't want groups of people to have any freedom at all, right? So we're just going to do that. So bring your hands together.